If you're a recruit or the parent of a recruit, you know that reaching out to college coaches is one of the most important steps in the process. But figuring out what to say to break the ice, that trips a lot of people up. And that's why I've partnered with Athlete Narrative. Athlete Narrative designed the Recruiter app to help athletes send clear, concise, and personalized emails to college coaches. Here's how it works. You start by filling out your radar page. Think of this as your digital resume. It's going to have your personal info, accolades, interests, and links to your game film. Then you use the Recruiter app to search for schools that match your interests. Once you find some schools, simply tap on a coach's name and the app will pull from your radar page to generate the perfect introductory email. All you have to do is personalize it with some quick info about why that specific school caught your attention. Then you hit send. The message goes straight from your inbox to theirs, and it's that simple. You do not need to pay thousands of dollars for an email service that might not even get results. For the same price as a month of Netflix, you can start sending emails that actually help you stand out. The recruiting process always rewards athletes who take initiative. Athlete Narrative helps you take that initiative faster. Download the app today using the link in this podcast description. Hang on to your hats, Information Superhighway. The New York Knicks are in the Eastern Conference Finals. Welcome to the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. There was no podcast. There was no podcast last week because my son brought home the daycare special and got me really sick. You can hear that there's still some lingering effects of that, but sickness aside, who cares? I am overjoyed. The last time that the New York Knicks were this good, I was an 8th grader planning a bar mitzvah reception with my parents. Most of my ideas for the reception were vetoed. The big compromise that my parents made with me was that instead of table numbers, people were seated at tables named after professional wrestlers in the WWF Attitude Era. So there was like a Stone Cold Steve Austin table and a Rock table and an Undertaker table. In hindsight, I can't even believe I got that. Nonetheless, what a ride. And I'm talking for a moment to loyal Knicks fans. You should know exactly where this is going because a lot of them are in the same camp as loyal Mets fans. The ones that would take the LIRR to the Garden as kids and have to leave the game early to make that 10-19 home on a school night and not get in trouble with their parents. My goodness, what a run. And if you're a believer that the big thing about professional sports is that it has this ability to tap into childhood nostalgia, the way the Knicks are playing is the coolest part of this whole thing. These are the 1990s Knicks. They are competing against teams who have equally skilled offensive players, sometimes more skilled offensive players. They compete against teams that run more efficient offensive stuff, maybe play a faster transition pace, especially the Pistons. Teams that shoot more threes, play more quote-unquote new school analytics-driven basketball. And in very vintage Knicks fashion, they just outwork these teams. And it is unbelievable to watch. And given my background, I think it's also incredible to support what we're really seeing, which is basically a scientific method hypothesis. Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau hypothesized that if they just filled a roster with a bunch of notorious bulldogs from their college days, just the hardest working players they could find, that they could win battles of attrition against some of the NBA's best. And now it's Knicks, Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. And these teams, just in terms of their styles of play, the Pacers are awesome to watch. Hard-nosed basketball, the tempo's unreal, constant transition threat, should make for a great series. And just watching the Knicks make this run is just bringing out the child in me. For basketball people that want to learn something, watch the way the Knicks wings play. And I want to specifically call attention to Mikal Bridges, who has gone multiple stretches in both the Pistons series and the Celtics series where he did not touch the basketball for 5 to 6 minutes of live game time and still hustled for every rebound, still made every defensive play he could, and still played like every possession was his last. There was a sequence specifically in the Pistons series, the knockout game, where he had an offensive rebound stick back, and that was literally the first time his hands touched the basketball in 6 minutes, combined with, two crucial defensive plays, sealing games in the Celtics series. Just really, really awesome to see. I mean, obviously, when you're looking for the clutch plays, it's Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns delivering like an all-star, OG and Josh Hart just doing what they do so well. So many different things you can learn from as a player. Let's close the book on that, and let's segue for what I want you to learn from as a recruit and a family today. The college landscape is changing. We talked about this lack of understanding of what it really looks like at the high school level and how you can work to bridge that gap. And then we've talked about the transfer portal. There are a lot of unique challenges now for coaches, not just at the Division I level, but for every level. And a challenge that not a lot of people really think about, at least from a coach's perspective, is why do coaches get into coaching? Most coaches, not all, and I want to really, really make sure I say that out loud, not all, but most coaches get into this gig because they want to develop young people over the course of their 4-year college experience. When I'm on a job interview, my favorite thing that I used to say to people interviewing me was, I chose basketball coaching because my favorite thing to do professionally is teach leadership. And I found that I was most effective at teaching leadership on the basketball court. This profession is filled with people that want to see young people grow, develop accountability, develop communication, develop relationship building skills, and then become badass professionals, for lack of a better way of saying it. That's the why of a lot of people in this profession. And not all those people deserve your sympathy. If people are working at the Power 4 level and making unbelievable money and churning out professional athletes, then this conversation's a little bit different. The challenge that I see is that too many people think that every college coach is that Power 4 coach that I just mentioned. So with that in mind, I felt like the best thing I could do at this juncture early on in this season of the podcast was showcase the lens of a notoriously developmental-oriented head coach. We throw a lot of words around like fit and values and intentionality, but I want you to hear what that actually looks like in practice from an established Division I coach who leads with those values at heart. Because amidst all of this change, there are a lot of coaches like this coach who are kind of saying to themselves, well, if people are kind of transferring every year and NIL is influencing all the decisions, like where do I fit into this game? And a really compelling thought that emerges from this conversation I had is it's not about pivoting just to be an NIL service or a transfer service. It's about providing name, image, and likeness revenue at the Division I level, but also still being development-based. And how do you do those two things at the same time? This is a coach who's done an exceptional job living his why over a very, very long Division I career. He is a beacon for longevity in the sport. His Boston University Terriers have finished in the top 3 of the Patriot League 5 of the last 6 campaigns. He has been voted Patriot League Coach of the Year 3 times since he's been at Boston University. A hugely relationship-focused coach, Joe Jones. Coach Jones has 2 young children. One, Sid Jones, just finished her playing career at Bowdoin. Sid, who you'll learn about more in the podcast, was a dominant Division III athlete. His son is on his way to UPenn to play basketball at the Ivy level. His lens on their journeys, their development, and his involvement in their development as a coach who is connected with just about everybody, I think provides some really valuable insight for any parent that's trying to navigate a child through the recruiting process. There's no expectation that an 18-year-old has this all figured out, but a good coach shows them what they don't know and how to get there. And there's this old cliche in coaching, especially on the men's side, that is the head coach is the leader of men. They're developing boys into men. And I think you're about to hear from a leader of men right now. So let's dive in with Boston University head coach Joe Jones. Coach Jones, thank you so much again for making the time. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, my man. Long Island, love it. Love it.
I'm, out in Buffalo, my wife and I are always craving a good slice. So it's like a summer goal for us. Get back down there and have good pizza.
Bro, I was all up in upstate New York. I went to Oswego, so I know what it's like to be upstate New York, my man.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the other parts of the state where once you're there, you got to have good people connections because you don't see the sun very much.
No, you do not. You do not.
Well, actually, I look forward to asking you a little bit about Oswego in a moment. But first, I want to start. This is an opportunity, I think, for a lot of young people to learn about coaching at your level, in addition to playing at your level. Something that's really cool about you and in general, the basketball family that you're a part of is you're kind of a beacon of longevity in the sport, which is harder and harder to have happen. My impression of you has always been that you were very relationship oriented. I would love to sort of learn how that was instilled in you, kind of what made you buy into that. Because you know what it's like with young coaches. Like I've seen a lot of young coaches that's not necessarily their currency, but they also burn out. So could you talk me through how that started for you?
Yeah, I think my mom. I remember my mom saying this to me when I was a young guy, and she was like, "I'm so proud of you because, I grew up in a neighborhood in the '70s. Everyone had large families, right? And so that's the way it was back then. So everybody had large families. So there were literally kids everywhere. And in my neighborhood in North Babylon, I was someone that was friends with all the younger kids, and would." Help them and I'd invite them to play sports with us, and I'd hang out with them, and my mom was just always like, "Oh, that's so cool that you are kind of big brother to the other kids in the neighborhood." And then I just think I've had some really cool coaches and big brothers myself, guys in the neighborhood that looked out after me. That's kind of the neighborhood I grew up in, where I think the older guys kind of looked out for the younger guys. And so I was just someone that I think had a lot of different relationships across the board. And then I was someone, when I went to school, the school was pretty diverse in the fact that it was black and white, and most of the black kids lived on one side of the bridge and most of the white kids lived on the other side of the bridge. And I think I was someone that just adapted very well. I played sports, Little League football with white kids. And so I was just someone that was friends with everyone and didn't really think about color maybe as much as some other kids did at the same stage. So I was just someone that was probably, someone that bridged the gap, I think, at times for people from different social backgrounds or even racial lines. That's kind of how I was always. I don't know. I won't say I was raised that way. It was just something that I kind of fell into because I played sports and was someone that just enjoyed people's company.
Was it important for you then? Because I know you were a D3 athlete. Was it important for you then to kind of seek out being on a team environment where you felt that camaraderie? Like, was that a part of your decision?
Yeah, I think I was really. Yeah, I think when I went. I was like a lot of kids when I played high school basketball at Half Hollow Hills West. My best man in my wedding was my backcourt partner, and I was his best man. We're making plans to hang out this summer. And so I always had those type of relationships. And I was really tight with the other guys on the team. And so that was something that was important for sure when I went up to Oswego, feeling that camaraderie with the older guys. I remember that. And then a big part of it was the coach. And someone I'm still really close with today. The assistant was the one that did the bulk of the work. But I remember going up to school, and one night I hung out with the guys. The other night I went to the coach's house for a meal and hung out with his family. He had two smaller kids that were young, and I went up to their room upstairs and played with the younger boy and hung out, and I remember kind of like that feeling pretty cool, just that home environment, and I just hit it off with him. So I think the coach played a big part in that as well.
And something I've learned, just in kind of learning more about you, is you still have a good relationship with that coach now.
Oh yeah.
Now, please go ahead. I'd love to hear more about it.
We play Colgate every year up there, and he comes to the games and comes to the locker room before the game, and there are times that he's stayed in the hotel with us, and we kind of try to make a point to see him every year. We talk on the phone. I'm still really close with his wife. She was like a second mom to me. I was like the older son in his family. I was really close. I spent summers at his house. So school would end in May. I would go for a month and live with my coach, upstate New York.
Wow.
Yeah, he still busts my chops that I didn't finish painting the barn. So he had this barn, and it was listen, man, it got a little shaky. Trying to get to the top of that thing, I was on a ladder. The ladder wasn't overly stable, so those last 3 levels did not get painted, man. So he still busts my chops about not finishing the barn. But we had some good times, man. Good times.
Self-preservation is important. You're a talented athlete. We got to keep you healthy. This is interesting to me though, because I can identify. When I was, this would be 23. Was the first time I met Reggie Witherspoon out in Buffalo and Jim Quitchoff. And the way that Reggie and Coach Quitch, Coach Heck and Turner would coach, and the way they talked about leadership, that was a very important thing for me in kind of getting my gears turning. Was there a part of you at that age that was already like, I think I would want to get into coaching after college? Because I know you coached at the high school level before you started the college level.
Yeah.
Like, were there things you were taking away from that experience at that time, or were you just more like in the moment and just enjoying it?
Well, the thing that happened for me is that my best friend's older brother was a guy by the name of Robbie Weingard, who actually ironically played at Hofstra back in the mid 80s, and he actually led Division I in 1985 in assists, which is crazy, right? Like crazy. His senior year, he led the whole country in assists, averaged like 9.9 assists a game. Phenomenal floor leader. So he was like my big brother mentor. He used to kick my butt, man. I still have not beaten that guy in a one-on-one game. And so I was going to be a freshman in college, and I had trained under him a lot. And he said, hey, man, you should come and work this camp called Kutcher Sports Academy. It was in the Catskill Mountains in Monticello, New York. He's like, there's a league at night, and there's some really good players there. It's a chance for you to train during the summer when you have free time, and then compete against some Division I guys. So I'm like, oh, man, that sounds great. So that's what I did. So I was during the day. So I had a bunk of 8 to 10 kids, and then I taught basketball for 3 hours a day, 2 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and then you coached a team at night for league, and then there was time to play during pickup during the lunch break that we would have, like a 3-hour break. We'd always play pickup then, and then we had leagues at night, and then you could always find time to train at night and the whole bit. So it was awesome, and I did that for 5 summers. But I remember the first time I had my first team and my first practice, and we were in layup. We were in a layup line. I put them in a layup line to start practice to warm them up. And I remember the feeling that I had in that moment, and it was just different than anything else I've ever felt. I could still feel that, and it just was one of those things. Was like that was a big moment for me, and you could feel it. I felt that like, oh my God, this is so much fun. I'm loving this. I'm 17 years old. The kids are 13, and they look up to you, but also close enough where you have a relationship with them that's a little different because you're close in age. And man, that was
almost like that third assistant spot.
Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of fun, man, and I think that was my oh wow moment.
Okay.
Didn't know that I would pursue coaching, but I remember that feeling. I do.
So I certainly don't want to speak for you, but I'm hearing a couple things that really stand out to me, and I want to put them together, and you tell me if this math adds up.
it seems like the big brother thing is important to you. Seems like relationships are really important to you. Would you say, flashing forward now, in the prime of your career, are these still things that are, part of the ethos of BU basketball, that you're going to recruit, building relationships, that you want to have young mentors on your team? Are these qualities that you're trying to instill in young men?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jared. And so, now that I've been in this for a long time, you reflect a lot, right? So you do some reflecting, like, oh my God, I can't believe this has happened for me. Can't believe this has happened for so long. And you're always talking with young people because you're recruiting them, and then you're coaching them, and you're trying to give them advice, and you're giving them maybe some experiences that they can learn from that you went through. And so you're always in this space that you're talking about. So you're always talking about those things. And so for me, I always wanted just to create an environment around my program that was one that the guys felt like, hey, man, Coach loves me. No matter what I do, that dude loves me. He's got my back. He cares about me more than just someone that's going to make a shot or make a play. We're talking about what I could do as a leader of this program that can impact the rest of their lives, not just in the moment, right? And so what are we talking about, right? So I just talked to a young man. He got us, our team GPA was a 3.45, so we have a lot of smart students, way smarter than I ever was. But this kid got a C+ in the course, and I heard from my assistant that part of the reason why he got a C+ was because he just didn't follow directions the right way. And he has a history of this, right? This kid has a history of this. So my thing when I got him on the phone just now was like, okay, my man, like, let's just talk man to man, and let's understand that the way that you're attacking these courses at times, this is going to follow you, man, right? So if you're not going to be someone that's going to be in tune with what's going on, ask questions, you're gonna miss out on some things later on in life. Like these are life lessons. This is not about you getting a C+, because we tell our guys A's and B's, no C's. And so my thing was to try to hold him accountable for our standard, but also help him understand, like, these are things that if you can grasp with all the talents that you have, now you're going to be going, you're going to be able to go to another level. If you don't, it's going to hold you back. And so the things that held you back was that you are not focused enough, and you miss out on information, and now you don't know when you're supposed to hand something in. That's something that should have happened in middle school, not in your junior year of college, right? So let's assess this. Let's tackle this. Let's not run away from it. Let's not make excuses about it. So that's what you're trying to do as a coach, is make sure that you're holding these guys accountable, not only for the things that are going on the court, but for the things that are going to impact their lives off the floor as well. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm all about. My background in counseling, who I am, those are things that I'm about, that I'm going to be invested totally in the total kid, not just one element of them.
Coach, you just hit on something that's really important to me that I actually have some data on. I think young people and their parents, as they navigate the recruiting process, hugely misunderstand this part. And I'll try to explain it concisely. What I would kind of describe to you is that they put head coaches on this gigantic pedestal where they are like these my way or the highway people. And I think the average person that will hear this interview is going to think, this kid fell below your standard, so you threw him off the team immediately. You know what I mean? Yeah, but what the reality actually looks like is like, no, we are a conditional family. I'm bringing somebody in to be a part of my family. And when I'm actually vetting people as I recruit, I'm actually just vetting people who I think, when you do make mistakes, I think you will be receptive to my teaching, and the bounce back will be within our channel. That, like, would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. And so that's kind of what we do, right? Like, that's exactly what we do. We had some Zoom calls, so we're now, the one great thing about COVID is that you can make use of the Zoom now, right? So we have Zoom calls where I'm doing the same thing. I'm vetting. I'm trying to get a feel for what the parents are like, right? I'm trying to see, okay, is the kid someone that I want part of my program? But as important, are the parents are going to be, they're going to be part of the program too. Do I want them a part of my family? Do they really understand? And then the way we do things, our values align. And if that happens, okay, it's a good mix. If that doesn't align, it might not be a great fit. And so that's the most important thing is for families to understand that, as you said, this is going to be an education. This is going to be a process, and sometimes the families and the kid they don't understand it's a process to become a great player.
They lack the patience.
Oh my God, they don't want to hear it. And so what you have to do, as you're telling the kid how great they are and how much they can make an impact, you have to be reasonable with what you're saying. So now when there is a struggle, they understand you've already had that conversation that, hey, my man, we feel like you could be a great player, but there are going to be steps to this. This is going to take some time before these things happen. Sometimes you could tell a family that, and they all hear he's going to be great. They don't hear all the stuff that you're talking about in terms of the steps that they take. But certainly the point that you just made, that if you go play for a guy that, is a quality person, hopefully they're reacting the way you did in terms of like, okay, you didn't do this great. I'm not happy about it, but we're just going to help you through this. We care about you, and we're gonna always be at have your back.
I'm very excited to talk a little bit more about that family component in a moment. But first, you mentioned COVID, and there isn't a sector of anything, especially given your background of mental health work, there isn't a sector of anything that wasn't affected by the pandemic shutdown. But when I talk to a lot of my friends from college, my friends from graduate school that do not work in basketball, what I try to explain to them is I want you to imagine that a lot of the parameters of how we do what we do were one way before the COVID shutdown. And then we all came back and they were completely different. The redshirting for transfers wasn't a thing anymore. NIL is starting to take off. There isn't regulations in place yet. I'm imagining, and before I got sick, we were navigating this at Canisius, so I'm imagining you were navigating at BU. A lot of the ways you recruit and build those relationships is kind of in flux right now. How are you navigating it, especially as someone, as longly tenured as you've been?
Yeah, I think you said this. So I am much more of a relationship person, right? So I'm not transactional type of guy. And so, early in conversation, you kind of know, okay, they're coming from a different, they're looking at this thing differently than I'm looking at this thing. This probably won't be a good match. So we're just kind of like going through the process of the recruiting part of this, trying to figure out who matches up with our values. We talk about selflessness, accountability, toughness. Do they match up with that? Are they looking for a quick buck, or do they want to get a great experience for their kid?
And you're at a phenomenal school to give them that too.
Yeah, and so for me, we work hard at trying to provide our guys with internships in the summertime in their field of study as they become juniors and seniors. We're really trying to set guys up to be successful way after their time at BU ends. And so that's kind of what we're all about, and that's what we're selling. That hasn't changed, but there's going to be a NIL component of what we're doing. There's going to be some of that as time goes on. We're not going to run away from that, but still, at the bottom line, it's still going to be at the heart of what we're doing. Will not change. At the heart of what we're talking about, who we are, is not going to change. And the thing that I talk to my staff about all the time is, I pride myself on presenting myself as I am, not something that I try to be to get you to come or get him to come. I want to be true to who I am, because that's what I'm preaching to my staff and to my players. And there are going to be challenges now with how this is set up, but I got to stay true to who I am, and understand that I'm going to have to adapt and change. But at the core of me, that's who I'm going to continue to be.
5 stars. I love that response, because that's how we elected to be on our staff as well. something that we've experienced, I'm curious if you've had this too, is it's easy when you're a teenager to maybe pick the wrong thing as you go through this process.
Absolutely.
But then you go through the wrong thing, and all of a sudden maybe you're thinking to yourself, I've been at this for a year now, and I think that Coach Jones actually was right was right about this. I've talked to actually high school age kids and their parents. I've referred to it as re-recruiting, where we have kids we've built great relationships with. They go to a place, they realize it wasn't the right fit for them because that staff or maybe that program weren't true for themselves, and all of a sudden they're in the portal and they reach out to you. Has that been an experience for you as well?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's been I'll tell you the other thing that has happened, man, is that I've had a lot of guys that have played for me at the different schools over the years I've done this, where when they're in school, you're like, hey, bruh, you need to really hit the books. You need to study. You need to, and they're caught up in being a 20-year-old kid on campus.
Right.
Everybody loves you. You're on TV. They get caught up in the wrong things, right? They're going to make the league, all this stuff, right? I've had so many of my former players, before I got to BU, before I got to, while I was at Columbia, would come back and were like, hey, man, I remember that conversation. They're coming back from playing over in Europe, and they have no clue what they're going to do. And so I try to help a few guys. Hopefully I was helpful, pointing some guys in the right direction, getting them off their feet. But it's a very scary thing, man, when basketball has been such a big part of everything that you do. And then when that's gone, the only thing that you can think of, I want to coach now. I want to stay around the game. I want to work guys out. And they're not, there's so many other talent. They have so many other talents. And my job here is to kind of expose them to those people and those things outside of basketball. Like, I'm fighting with a kid right now. I got a kid right now that's got a 3.9 in Questrom School of Business.
Wow.
And he's just not been around really any big-time people in finance and business. Like, that's just, for some of us, we didn't grow up around them. My dad was a blue-collar guy. All my relatives were blue-collar people. Right. My friends, when I was at Hills West, their families were, their parents were people that went to college and had, high level jobs. So I was exposed to that in that way. But no one in my immediate family, had done those things. So sometimes we're talking to first generation, second generation kids. They just haven't been exposed to that. And I'm battling with them right now about, bro, like, join a club, go to a meeting. Stay for that seminar. Where's your resume? Trying to help him understand, because he's got so many gifts. And I think there are times where our players are not our players, but I think in general, we need to do a better job of helping these guys think about their lives outside of basketball. So much is caught up now in making money. No one's talking about the GPA. No one's talking about the graduation rates anymore. That used to be the big thing, was all of the APR and the grade. No one even talks about that anymore.
So I'm really appreciative that you said this, because there's a couple of my clients, high school kids and their parents that I work with right now, that I'm going to basically send a 40-second clip of what you just said to them and be like, see? Because the problem I'm navigating now is, I don't think if you're a recruit that you're navigating this process correctly if you're not looking at a place where you can see yourself being extremely successful and supported for a 4-year experience.
Yeah. It's
okay if something goes wrong. You'll get supported and we'll help you fix it. But this idea of, no, the modern time is like, I'll go here and maybe I'll have an opportunity to get a raise, and I'll go to this other place and I'll get, that ultimately all dries up.
Yeah.
And being a college athlete, I mean, my experience, and I would love to hear your take, being a college athlete will always help you start a conversation with a professional, start a conversation with an interview. But if that's all you got.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. No, you nailed it. I mean, we're not helping our young people right now. We are not. And I'm talking about all of us, because no one is even, like, I see social media all the time about this guy transferring, this guy, but no one's even talking about, there's no conversation. Are these guys going to graduate? Like, if you go to 3 different schools, can you graduate? Like, are there going to be enough credits that go through? Like, how is this going to work? I'm really concerned about that part of it. And then what you just said, okay, when my playing days are over, I went to 3 different schools. I went to play. Most of these guys are going to play over in Europe if they have a chance to play. That's going to be done in 3 years. Then what? Now what am I doing? And that NIL money you got, could have been dried up a long time ago. And so that's the thing that I think is most detrimental to what we're doing right now, is that we're not holding our young people accountable. And I think you can still hold them accountable and help them understand about the graduation and these other things with NIL. I don't think it's got to be one or the other. I just think right now we are on the other side and not even talking about guys graduating.
The exact quote I said to one of my closest friends in coaching on the phone yesterday is, right now there is not an apparatus in place to protect the most competitive coaches in our profession from themselves.
Absolutely.
So absolutely. I honestly really appreciate you bringing light to that, because I'm privileged enough to have this forum, to have a great support network, but hearing it from somebody like you makes my life a lot easier. Yeah. So thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
You said something interesting about how we prioritize things in this process, what the messaging is, and I want to kind of move 360 now. The very first time that you and I spoke was about a decade ago, and you had a young daughter who was tearing up an overnight camp. And I was her coach, and I was blown away by her potential. And, she was young. So a lot of my questioning at that time, and, for my style, she was in 8th grade. Yeah. I'm not going to be like, yo, Sid Jones, the 8th grader, I'm going to connect you with everyone in the world. But I was definitely hyping her up. I'm imagining after you and I spoke, that through her entire high school career, this young lady had a lot of options. Without getting too far into it, what I can share is she ended up at Bowdoin, an amazing school with a rich history in women's basketball. She was a 2-time All-American. She was on some dominant teams. She had a great college experience that just ended, I believe.
Yep.
Can you walk me through what it was maybe like to have some of those conversations with her? Because you're in this rare position where you're a parent of someone going through it that could do a number of things based on her aptitude and her ability, but you also know what you know.
Yeah, so Sid, and I do remember that conversation and talk with you. I think I actually called you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I wanted to know how she was doing. And, she ended up going to Noble. So the woman that worked at the camp, I forgot her name, who's was a great mentor for Sid, worked at Nobles, and she ended up getting recruited to Nobles from that camp.
Wow.
Ellen Crawley. Remember Ellen?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ellen's awesome. And so, Ellen coached her. She had great coaching there at Nobles. Alice Gallagher was a great coach for her. She played with Chrissy Ducharme, who was a great player at Nobles. Maybe that's her mom, Chrissy.
Were you talking about? Oh, I know who you're talking about, though. Caroline Ducharme. Ended up going to UConn. Yeah.
And so Sid was like the Robin to Caroline, but they played on some dominant teams. COVID hit, and really, Sid probably didn't have as much exposure because of that.
Absolutely.
And Sid didn't care about the level. She just wanted to find her place, and she loved the small town, of Bowdoin, loved it, and ended up choosing there, and had a great experience there. But as she was going through, and my daughter will say this to you, I would be pushing her and saying to her, all right, Sid, you are a fantastic athlete. We need to develop your overall skill. And she didn't train as hard as probably I would have liked to have trained, but she was very competitive and probably showed up. She was one that would show up to practice every day and give you everything she had. And
the gamer, right.
Yeah. And then when that was over, she was kind of like, all right, I want to go and watch an episode of Law and Order, And so she ended up having a great career, but probably could have developed into a Division I player, in my opinion, because of her athleticism and understanding. She just needed to work on her skill. But she ended up going to Bowdoin, and they did a great job with her. In her second year, she got a new coach, and her and the new coach were tight, and phenomenal relationship that they have, and Sid just prospered, got better and better every year. And that was the cool thing to watch, is her development, man. Like, she was always good. She got there her first year. She was a very good player. I think she was like the leading scorer on the team as a freshman, and every year she got better and better. And then by the end of it, she was lights out, man.
She was the show.
Yeah, she was really good. It was fun to watch, and in the championship game of her senior year, her team was down by 8 at half, and Sid had she had 2 points, 2 fouls, and 3 turnovers at halftime. And in the second half, just like she always does, man, she took it to another level. She scored 22 in the half. She had an N1 to take the lead with 50 seconds to go. It was something out of a movie, man. She made every big shot down the stretch, and it was packed. The gym was packed, and the whole bit. But what a great experience it was to kind of watch her develop and watch her kind of, I think, gain so much confidence in herself through that experience. And, and then she worked with the Celtics. Brad Stevens is a good friend, helped her get a job. She interned with them. She did a lot of the advanced stats, challenge, the whole challenge call. She worked on a whole plan for that for 2 summers. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. So now she wants to coach. Yeah.
That's so cool to hear. And for anybody that's unfamiliar, the environment of Bowdoin is really cool.
Unreal,
because
unreal.
The gym sort of has this historic reputation. They get a huge local community support.
Everybody goes. It's so wild, man. It's so wild. Really cool. And she got to know a lot of the fans over the years, and she would go out to their house for dinner, and in her little space, she's important. She's important. So
I love
it's been
that.
Cool to kind of see.
Flipping it, because I'm sure at this stage of your career you're very familiar with what some of the trepidation is with parents and what concerns parents and recruits have. Was there anything about going through that with her as a parent that maybe makes you think about the recruiting process a little bit differently now?
Yeah, well, my son, I probably had more. My son's going to be a freshman at Penn next year, and he plays. And that was probably harder on me because everyone, and you're trying not to overdo it, right? You're trying to let your friends know that he's out there. You're trying to let him know that he'd have an interest, but you're also trying not to be that helicopter parent. Then you're watching the games, and you're like, oh, my God, I can't believe they're doing this or they're doing that. He should be – you're like every other parent feeling like you want your kid to shine. And so the best thing you could do is shut up. I just shut up, man. Even when he was young, even when both my kids were young, I would tell them both, you do not have to do this. Because my whole life is basketball. I drive my wife crazy, that poor woman. So my whole life is basketball. And so they were always around that. They were always in the gym, coming to games, watching it on TV. The guys were at the house. They knew the players. It was just such a big part of their lives. And I never wanted them to do it because of me. So when my son was going through high school, I allowed him to have control over his own destiny, meaning that he got to be. So he got into the car. And my daughter got into the car. I would never say one word. I wouldn't say one word about the game. If they want to talk about the game, sometimes my wife and them will be talking, and then they would say, Dad, what do you think? Like I was not going to do that to my kids. And so when my son would always ask me to work out. I never said to him, hey, let's go work out. He always dictated when we would go. And so since he was like 3rd grade, I would work him out. And then when I went to his games as he got older, and there were a lot of frustration, a lot of tough nights. Like that's just the way athletics are.
Right, the peaks and valleys of being an athlete.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say a word until he said something. And then sometimes if I thought I could say something helpful, I would wait to the next time, like 2 days later, 3 days later. We'd be in the gym or we'd be sitting on the couch, and I would say, hey, on that set, on that play, I thought you had this read or you could have done that. And so I was not over the top. And then when he was going to try to pick a high school, he wanted to leave the public school, go to a private school. That was all him. And then through this recruiting process, picking Penn, it was all him, And so, for me, that's kind of how I did it. And I would tell any parent, you're better off just shutting up and letting the coach coach. Now, the thing that I would do, I would call the coach, and I would say, hey, you need to tell him this, or you need to, or I would say, if I knew he was frustrated, I would say, okay, I'm about to go work him out. Tell me what you're seeing so I can help. But I would never be like, why'd you do this with my son? He should be doing this. It was never that. It was almost like a collaboration of trying to help him. And I would always say that to the coaches, like, I'm calling you so we can help him, not because I'm questioning you what you're doing.
Based on the flow of this conversation, I think you'll be comfortable with me sharing this, and I want to share it because I think it will be very educational to parents listening. After you called me at that camp, I actually shared with a couple coaches, and at that time, I was only 5 years into my coaching career, so I was still kind of green. I remember in the moment being in disbelief at how inquisitive you were about how you could help your daughter in the process when you were calling me. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in more of, I will never forget one of the things you specifically said to me, which is, I would love to continue helping my daughter grow. Can you give me some insight into, how she played so that if she asks me for more, I can give her some of the feedback? And now that I've had more experience, in my mind, I'm like, wow, if more kids and families approached it that way, this would be so much easier. And I remember actually how hard of a time it was for me to say, like, you're not going to love this, but she killed it. Like, maybe we can build up her non-dominant hand a little bit. Like, she really liked going one way more than the other, but, like, she did really good. And she's got a good future. But, like, that's, those types of conversations really stand out to me. And if you are a parent and you're listening to this, I can tell you, and I'm sure you'd agree, Coach, those conversations stick out to us as coaches when we're recruiting too.
Absolutely.
When you get the right set of parents in the room that are leaving it up to their kid and the kid is trying to take the initiative, that can drive up their stock.
Absolutely. No, listen, there is no question that parents can hurt the process. There is no question that parents can impact how a staff is going to view the recruitment of a kid. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is just let them talk. Just let the parent talk. And so when the parents are talking and you have open-ended questions and they're going to show what they're about. And for me, I'm going to try to stay away from the parents that I know are going to be a pain in the butt. And I tell all the parents straight up the first time we talk to them, do not send your son here if you want to call me and complain about his playing time or his role on the team. If you want to have that, this is not the right place. And then the few times that has happened in the last 6 to 7 years, I go right down to the team and I say to the guys, hey guys, I had a parent call. Please tell your parents not to call here about basketball. They can call about your mental health. They can call about academics. But I'm not having any question. I'm not having a conversation about basketball. You guys can knock on the door. You guys know me. I'm open to conversation, man. I talk to every one of you guys. I text you guys. I call you guys. We go out to lunch. At any time, you can ask me a question. And then you can communicate that back to your parents. But I'm not having that because that's going to crush your development. And so
well said.
I want to ask and most of them listen, but I have a few that have their own and they all have their own feelings about what's going on with their kid. But the one thing that they can't deny is my love for their kid. They can't question that. They can question how I'm playing them, what they're doing. They can't question how much I love my guys, because that is something that is apparent to me.
This is so helpful that you just shared this, because now we can flip it, and this is a really good place to end. So this is going to be your last question. I want to share a data point from my research with you, and then I'm imagining you're going to agree with the data point, given how this conversation is going, but I'd love your input afterwards. So I asked 50 coaches. Half of them were scholarship level, half of them were non-scholarship. Scale of 1 to 10, how prepared do you think the average high school kid you're recruiting actually is for college basketball? Like, how much do you think they actually understand what's going on? Average response I got was a 3.5 out of 10, and it didn't matter what level. Everyone said 3.5 out of 10. So parents will look at me and be like, that's not possible. He plays AAU. He works out with a trainer. And I'm like, it's super, super possible.
Yeah.
Tell me where those areas of limitations are and what these young kids can be working on.
So first off, the intensity. Oh my God. Like, I go to a high school practice. Most of the high school practice, I'm cringing because, and that's the way my high school practice was. It's just not, it's much more laid back.
It's casual.
Right. Oh my God, it's very casual. So the intensity level is going to go way up, right? The next thing that I think guys really struggle with is the speed of the game. Is that there are now 9 other guys on the floor that are faster than you and stronger than you. And so the speed of the game is going to take some time for guys to get caught up with that. And then the next thing is the physicality of the game, right? And let's go back to the speed of the game also will be the IQ, because things are happening so fast that guys have a hard time reacting early on to a closeout, where the help defense is coming from. Like, just to make those types of reads, it takes time to get in those situations where the speed and the guy pressuring you and the length and size of a guy is going to be different. The angles are different. So it takes time to get used to that. And then the physicality of the game is night and day. And so you got to get stronger. You got to get in the gym. And so even for a guy that can shoot it, you could struggle shooting the ball and at the college level early on, just because everything's happening so much faster. You're just not used to getting your shot off with that type of speed. So I've seen all of that. I've seen a guy really struggle in the preseason where we didn't think he could play a lick, and 2 weeks in practice, he was our leading scorer for the year. So I've seen that, and so the thing that you have to do as a coach is not judge too early. But early on, it's going to take some time for those guys to get caught up, for sure. I don't know what I would say 3.5. I don't know how, but I do think most guys don't play a big role until their junior year. That's a fact. So we see the Cooper flags. We think everybody's Cooper flag. But the average guy is not playing that much early on. That's what people don't want to hear. Nobody wants to hear that, man.
Well, and the other part is it's a weird intersection with capitalism and basketball. An unwillingness to accept what they're actually good at because they just want to shoot the ball. I've said to so many young people, hey, you don't have this decision-making part down, but you can box out. So if you just buy into that and you just go get maybe a hustle 10, like can you get 2 stick backs and score 1 in transition and then just play unbelievable defense and rebound for us? But they always want more, and it goes back to what you said earlier about that patience component. If you pack your patience, the biggest key of why I share this is understand that we're recruiting you as an incomplete project, and we're going to teach you.
Yeah. Because I think the way you talk to a kid, I think you have to be careful. It goes back to the recruiting process too. I think you have to be careful the way you're talking to a kid, that they have to understand that, okay, this is what I see, but you got to come earn it. And if you're not able to do these things, then so I always say that to them, like, if you can't get over a ball, you're a guard, and you can't get through a ball screen, you can't get through screens, you can't stay in front of a guy, you're not ready to make decisions, you're not able to be ready to go every day and be consistent contributor, you're probably not going to play much early on. Do I think you could do it? Yeah, but you still have to come do it. And so a lot of people don't they don't want to hear that part. They just want to hear what they want to hear. And it's a process, man. But the last point I would say that you said, it's like it's okay to go play a role early on. Like you want to get on the floor. The first thing you want to do is get on the floor. Right? So these are things that you could do to get on the floor. Get on the floor first before you become the star. You know?
Box out, solid defense, good
contest
vision.
a shot, dive for a loose ball, be the first in the gym to come work on your game before practice, be the last guy to leave, do all the hustle things. When the coaches talk about these are the guys that are playing the hardest, be one of those guys. Be the most vocal guy. There's a million ways to get on the court.
We have to end there. Not even because I could talk to you for another 5 hours, but what a great way to end a podcast, just with that little mic drop.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for making the time, Coach. Very excited to track BU again, and hope you enjoy. I know not a lot of it because that's not how it works in our profession, but some downtime this summer. Hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. It was awesome being on. Also reuniting after that conversation 10 years ago.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. For more information about my Nail the Recruiting Process project or the work that I do with individuals or teams, please visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you have ideas for podcast guests, questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, or you just want to reach out and say hi, please feel free to email me anytime at recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, the word gear, all one word, at gmail.com. Finally, follow me on social media at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram. That's my home base for all news, updates, and content. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.